Right now, multiple earthquakes are striking Pozzuoli and Naples, one after another. The ground has been rattling all day with constant seismic activity. Families rush outside as another tremor hits, then another. The shaking will not stop. At a recent volcanic convention, scientists delivered a warning that silenced the room. The probability of a phreatic eruption is increasing. It could occur at any time, and there may be no warning at all. What is driving these nonstop earthquakes? Why can't the authorities stop what's happening underground? And if 500,000 people need to evacuate, will there be enough time? Before we dive into the answers, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The earthquake strike inside Campi Flegrei, a caldera few people outside Italy have heard of. This is not a classic volcano with a smoking cone rising above the landscape. Campi Flegrei is mostly underground, spreading across a large area of land and coastal waters near Naples. The boundaries are invisible to anyone except geologists. The volcanic crater is inhabited. Populated towns sit directly inside it, where the earthquakes occur beneath homes and streets. More than 500,000 people live in the red zone, the area that would be hit by pyroclastic flows during an eruption. These flows are fast, lethal, and impossible to outrun. Temperatures can reach 1,472 degrees Fahrenheit or 800 degrees Celsius. There is no shelter capable of withstanding them. But this was only the first warning. The yellow zone extends beyond the crater rim, home to another 800,000 people who would receive heavy ashfall during an eruption. Ash thick enough to collapse roofs and choke the air. The greater Naples metropolitan area holds more than 6 million people total, all living within reach of the caldera's influence. Government authorities are rehearsing earthquake response procedures and volcanic eruption evacuations across the region. Emergency drills run in schools and town squares. Civil protection teams stage rescue equipment. Scientists repeatedly warn the public that the risk is rising. Yet no large-scale evacuation has been ordered. The reasons are blunt. Overpopulation makes moving 500,000 people nearly impossible. Economic pressure from tourism, real estate investment, and illegal construction creates powerful incentives to downplay the danger. New developments continue even inside the crater, including a planned hotel near the most active seismic zones. What came next shocked even the scientists. The current unrest period began in November 2005 when the ground started rising after years of quiet subsidence. Since then, earthquakes have been occurring daily, increasing in magnitude, frequency, and cumulative energy. What began as imperceptible tremors has escalated into a crisis that dominates daily life across the caldera. Land uplift is now measured at 2.5 centimeters per month, and it is not decreasing. At the old port in Pozzuoli, boats stand marooned in long grass on new land that has risen out of the sea. Ancient Roman columns have fossils of mollusks halfway up, prove they once stood underwater. The ground breathes, lifting and falling in cycles that grow more violent each year. The formation of Campi Flegrei dates back 15,000 years when an eruption so massive it emptied the underground magma chamber caused the ground above to collapse inward. The earth caved in, creating a crater wider than Manhattan, with the southern edge now lying beneath the Bay of Pozzuoli. Over millennia, the landscape filled in with towns and farmland until the original scar almost disappeared beneath civilization. Since that ancient collapse, at least 70 eruptions have broken through the surface. Each one opened new vents, domes, or steaming fields, sometimes with little warning. The most recent eruption occurred in 1538, building the hill called Monte Novo in just a few days. Parish records from that year describe darkness at noon, choking ash, and ground shaking so violent that homes split open. For weeks, the air was thick with sulfur. And the signs were already spreading.
The earthquake swarms are not isolated events spread across hours or days. They are rapid sequences, often striking seconds apart in relentless succession. Many earthquakes fall in the magnitude 2.0 to 3.0 range, strong enough to rattle windows and crack plaster. But several magnitude 4.0 or higher events have already struck in recent years, each one more damaging than the last. In May 2024, a seismic swarm erupted with unprecedented intensity. About 150 earthquakes hit in just 6 hours, with the strongest reaching magnitude 4.4. It was the most energetic event recorded since monitoring began in 2005. Families evacuated in the middle of the night, clutching children and whatever belongings they could carry. Then, in March 2025, another magnitude 4.4 quake struck at 1:25 a.m., waking thousands from sleep and cracking walls across Pozzuoli and Naples. In June 2025, a magnitude 4.6 earthquake hit offshore in the Gulf of Pozzuoli, the strongest ever recorded at Campi Flegrei in modern history. Buildings shook violently. People fled into the streets. Some families have not been able to return home due to structural damage. But the volcano had one more secret. When the magnitude climbed and the swarms intensified, authorities faced pressure to raise the official alert level. Past promises seemed to require it, but instead of triggering evacuations, officials created a new intermediate warning called dark yellow, a level designed to acknowledge rising danger without activating mandatory evacuation protocols. The decision allowed the government to avoid the political and economic catastrophe of ordering 500,000 people to leave. For many residents, it felt like a betrayal. The resistance to evacuation runs deeper than economics. It is rooted in historical trauma that still shapes emotions today. In the 1970s and 1980s, forced evacuations tore communities apart when the ground surged upward during previous bradyseismic crises. Police and military forced tens of thousands of residents from the historic Rione Terra district in Pozzuoli. They were relocated to new apartments, and the old quarter was seized permanently by the state. Today, tourists wander the still empty streets of that quaint hilltop district, admiring beautiful historic buildings that stand mostly uninhabited. For those who lived through those relocations, the memory is not of safety, but of loss. Families separated, neighborhoods erased, promises they could return never fulfilled. Older residents remember, and many have vowed never to leave again. What they may not realize is that the danger has evolved. The earthquakes are not random. They continuously hit the same epicenters: Pozzuoli, the Solfatara area, underwater sections of the caldera. Each swarm pounds the same fractured ground, widening cracks, destabilizing foundations, wearing down structural integrity. Researchers using artificial intelligence recently mapped thousands of micro-earthquakes that standard networks missed, expanding total recorded seismicity over 3 years from 12,000 events to more than 54,000. These swarms cluster along a ring fault encircling the caldera, a structure that could focus future earthquakes and amplify risk. But the pattern is not just about numbers. A new type of seismic activity has emerged since 2021, described by scientists as burst-like swarms, rapid sequences so tightly spaced that individual events blur together on seismograms. In studies at other volcanic systems, burst-like swarms have been associated with phreatic explosions and critical phases of unrest. At Campi Flegrei, they now define the caldera's state of activity. And the system is accelerating. Monitoring equipment across the caldera is failing at the worst possible time. Buoys and water sensors, critical for detecting unusual sea level changes, are often damaged, destroyed by boats, or possibly vandalized. These sensors are essential for tsunami detection, yet they remain offline for weeks at a stretch. Some equipment around the Solfatara crater went dark in early 2024, creating dangerous data gaps during periods of rapid change. Technicians blame geothermal damage and budget shortfalls, but the result is the same: blind spots in the monitoring network exactly when visibility matters most. On the night of October 12, 2024, a swarm of shallow earthquakes cracked open via Naples, the main artery through Pozzuoli. Shops closed, schools shut down, emergency crews cordoned off leaking gas zones. Workers patched the road, only to watch new steaming vents burst through the asphalt by morning. It was as if the earth decided our repairs were pointless, said a shop owner still guarding his storefront days later. Infrastructure damage from past crises remain unrepaired. Seawalls patched with sandbags have not been reinforced. Bridges undermined by ground movement remain restricted to light vehicles. Evacuation centers have roofs damaged from earlier quakes, leaving them as exposed as the homes people are supposed to flee.
Buildings across Pozzuoli were not designed for this level of seismic stress. Most structures were built before modern codes or ignored regulations entirely. Illegal development continues even now, expanding the number of people at risk. But the numbers underground tell an even more urgent story. Land uplift reached 2.5 centimeters per month in late 2024 and has not decreased since. By early 2025, the total uplift at the Rione Terra monitoring station in central Pozzuoli had reached approximately 148 centimeters since the crisis begun, with nearly 30 centimeters added in 2024 alone. Between February and March 2025, an intense seismic swarm caused a sudden uplift of about 1 centimeter in a single day, pushing the monthly average to 30 millimeters. Fumarole temperatures at the Solfatara Pisciarelli vent have climbed to 173 degrees Celsius, the highest on record. Carbon dioxide emissions from this hydrothermal system have surged to 1,557 tons per day, a level comparable to emissions from actively erupting volcanoes with open conduits. The rising gas flux suggests an intensification of processes deep beneath the surface. Earthquakes continue relentlessly, pausing only for brief intervals before resuming. Last year, scientists logged over 2,500 earthquakes in a single month. The pattern shows no sign of stopping. What is happening beneath Pozzuoli? For years, many scientists assumed the rising ground and increasing seismicity signaled magma ascending toward the surface, the classic precursor to eruption. But recent studies have reframed that understanding. Research published in 2023 focused on carbon dioxide measurements and concluded that gas releases correlated more closely with heating and pressurization of a shallow hydrothermal reservoir located 2.7 to 4 kilometers beneath the surface, rather than fresh magma rising from depth. A follow-up study in 2025 compared the 1982-1984 crisis with the current unrest from 2011 to 2024 and built laboratory models using materials that mimic Campi Flegrei's caprock. The experiments showed that a sealed geothermal reservoir beneath a cracked lid could trigger swarms of shallow earthquakes and steam-driven phreatic explosions without magma breaching the surface. This does not mean the caldera is safe. Magma remains at depth, but the immediate threat may not be a traditional volcanic eruption. Instead, the danger lies in the pressurized hydrothermal system itself. Phreatic explosions are highly unpredictable and can occur with little warning, driven by water flashing to steam when heated by underlying magma. Some scientists argue the data do not rule out magma movement entirely. The debate continues, and the uncertainty is deepening. Government press releases follow a predictable cycle. Earthquake swarm has started. Hours later, earthquake swarm has stopped. Then the pattern repeats. Sometimes the cycle completes in a single day. Other times it stretches across weeks. The public has grown accustomed to the announcements, each one blending into the next until the warnings lose their urgency. The swarms have intensified since early 2024, similar to the February and March sequences that brought strong shaking and widespread alarm. All indicators appear to be climbing towards something, but toward what? No one can say with certainty. For Maria, a resident of Pozzuoli's historic center, the earthquakes have become inseparable from daily life. She wakes to tremors. She feels them while cooking dinner. At night, she keeps a bag packed by the door with documents, medication, and a change of clothes. Her children recognize the different types of shaking now, the sharp jolt of a shallow quake versus the rolling motion of a deeper one. She said we live with it during a recent interview. But every time the ground shakes, you wonder if this is the one that will be different. Her family is not alone. Across the caldera, residents share the same unspoken question. When will it end? And how? The situation resembles a frog in slowly heating water. The danger increases gradually. People grow accustomed to it. The volcano gives clear warnings, steady and relentless, but without the sudden shock that forces immediate action. Each earthquake is survivable. Each uplift cycle eventually slows. Each swarm subsides, at least for a while. And so life continues even as the system edges closer to an outcome no one can predict.
What scientists know is this: Campi Flegrei is experiencing its most intense unrest in modern history. The ground has risen nearly 1.5 meters since 2005. Earthquakes have increased exponentially in both frequency and magnitude. Fumarole temperatures and gas emissions are at levels seen only at actively erupting volcanoes. Burst-like seismic swarms linked to phreatic explosions elsewhere now characterize the caldera's behavior. What remains unknown is the timeline. No one can predict when or if the system will rupture completely. The hydrothermal reservoir could stabilize, releasing pressure gradually through vents and tremors. Or it could fail catastrophically, triggering a phreatic explosion or breaching the seal that has kept magma at depth for almost 500 years. Scientists cannot yet distinguish between the signals of a system venting safely and one approaching collapse. The complexity of the caldera, with its nested structures, fractured caprock, and interconnected hydrothermal and magmatic systems, defies simple interpretation. For the families living inside the red zone, the volcano is not a distant abstraction. It is the ground beneath their feet, the tremor that wakes them at 3 a.m., the crack in the wall that widens a little more each month. Some have left, most have stayed, bound by economics, emotion, or the belief that nothing catastrophic will happen today. The volcano may be giving a clear warning, but whether the warning will be heeded before it is too late remains the question no one can answer. When will the earthquakes finally stop? What will it take for authorities to act decisively? And if the crust ruptures, will there be time to save everyone who refuses to leave? The answers lie hidden beneath the streets of Pozzuoli, locked inside a pressurized system that has been building for 2 decades. The volcano is speaking. Whether anyone listens may determine who survives.